Hey guys, go ahead and get out your note sheet for 2-3 multi-step equations. So we have 4 steps for solving multi-step equations. Step 1 would be to distribute, and that's only if necessary. If there is no distributive property, you just move to step 2. And step 2 says to combine like terms that are on the same side of your equation, if necessary, again, because you don't always have like terms. And moving into step 3 says to solve the equation using inverse operations, and then finally step 4 would be to check your solution. So I have the first example here. It's not in your notes, so if you want to just watch this one to kind of remind yourself from how to do these. And I have the steps listed on the side here as well that you just wrote down. So step 1 says to distribute if necessary, and I do have distributive property here, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. So negative 2 times 3x should be negative 6x, and then negative 2 times, and this is where you need to be careful, that's technically a negative 7, is going to be a positive because 2 negatives multiplied give you a positive. Step 2, the combine like terms. I don't really have like terms on the left side or the right, so I move to step 3, and I'm just solving a 2-step equation. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 14 from both sides, and then I'm going to divide both sides by that negative 6. And my final answer should be x equals negative 4. Last but not least, I am going to do a check real quick, so I'm going to plug my negative 4 right back in here for x, and 3 times negative 4 should be negative 12, minus 7 is negative 19, and then negative 19 times negative 2 is 38. So I checked just in my head. You can write the checks out if that's easier for you, or you can use your calculator, but you definitely want to verify your answers when you're doing these. Okay, so here's your first example on your notes, so we're going to go ahead and through and solve this. So step 1 is to, again, distribute, and I do have parentheses, so I am going to distribute that negative 7. So negative 7 times x is just negative 7x, and negative 7 times negative 3 is positive 21. Okay, step 2, look for like terms. Like terms are meaning if you have, x's in 2 different spots on a side, or numbers that you can combine, but we don't. So step 3 is solve. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of our 21 by subtracting. And that's going to give us negative 28, and then divide by negative 7, and we get x equals 4. Last but not least, we're going to go ahead and do that check. So negative 7 times 4 minus 3, and typically you want to put parentheses around when you substitute back in to check, but I know it's not going to affect this, so 4 minus 3 is 1, and then negative 7 times 1 is negative 7. Okay, example 2, so again looking for distributive property I've got going on right here, and you want to be careful. You're distributing the 4, but in front of the 4 is the negative, so technically we're distributing the negative 4. So the 6 that's there I'm just going to rewrite, and now I'm going to go ahead and do negative 4 times x, which is negative 4x. Negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12. Okay, step 2 says to combine like terms. So you're looking for any of the common terms on one of the sides, and if you have more than 2 terms on any side, there is stuff to put together. So if I look at the left, I've got this the 6 and this 12. Those are like terms. They're both just plain old numbers, and you could put those 2 numbers together to make life easy, and 6 plus 12 is 18. Okay, and now I'm ready to just solve like a normal 2-step equation. So I'm going to subtract 18, and that's going to give me negative 27, and then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. And 4 does not go into 27 evenly, and I cannot reduce this at all, so the best that I can do is rewrite this as 27 fourths. And just leave it as is. You don't want to do decimals really, and you don't want mixed numbers, so that's a good answer. So I have the check shown here, and for this kind of problem it was actually easier to distribute the 4 when I'm doing the check instead of putting 27 fourths minus 3 together in parentheses, and you can do that because of distributive property. And when you distribute your 4, or negative 4 times 27 fourths, the 4's just cancel each other out, so you really end up with just minus 27, and then negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12, and then when you combine these 3 numbers together, you're going to end up getting that negative 9. In class, you can just use your calculator to check something like this as well. Okay, example 3, you actually have distributive property twice, so I'm going to just go ahead and start. So 3 times n is 3n. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. For your second group, it's negative 2 times 3n to give you negative 6n, and negative 2 times negative 7 to give you positive 14. Okay, since I have all this stuff going on, I definitely have like terms. Remember, if there's more than two things on a side, there's like terms. So I can put 3n and negative 6n together to condense that a little and make that negative 3n. And then I can also combine my negative 12 and positive 14, and together those make 2. So now this problem's a lot easier to solve than what it started as. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. That'll give us 27, and then divide by negative 3, and 27 divided by negative 3 should give us negative 9. So when you do your check on something like this, you have to plug your negative 9 into 2 different spots. So I have shown where you're going to plug it back in, and then you're going to do your parentheses. So negative 9 minus 4 would give you negative 13, and then over in your right hand parentheses, 3 times negative 9 is negative 27, minus 7, negative 34, and then last I'm going to go ahead and multiply here, which is going to give me negative 39, and then negative 2 times times negative 34 should be positive 68. So then your last thing is 68 minus 39, and that will give you your 29. This is one where it would be easier to just check in class, and a good option is to store negative 9 in for n and then type in the equation that you had and make sure that gives you 29. Okay, and then number 4 is very similar to 3, so we've got this multiple distributive property, so we're just going to start 6 times n, 6n, 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, and then on the right grouping here you actually are distributing a negative, and if you want to use the identity property, we can technically put a negative 1 there. So it's like negative 1 times 3n, which is negative 3n, and then negative 1 times 4 is negative 4, and that's important to notice that with the parentheses with a minus in front, it will affect what the answers are, so you want to be careful with that. Next we've got some like terms, so we've got a 6n minus 3n, which is going to give us 3n, and then we got negative 12 and negative 4, which is negative 16. So when you combine like terms, it's just like combining integers. You follow your integer rules. And then to solve, we're going to do opposite operations. So we're going to add 16. We'll get 3n equals 15 and divide by 3. And we get n equals 5. So again, when you do your check here, it's a little bit more work with longer equations, but definitely worth it to guarantee your answers right. So if you take a look at the check, you end up getting 5 minus 2 to give you 3, and then 6 times 3 is 18, and then 3 times 5 plus 4 would be 19, and 18 minus 19 does give you that negative 1. So the back of your note sheet is just a little bit of extra practice for you guys. This is to be done with your notes as well, since we're not going to do much practice in class. So what you can do is just try the problem on your own, and then you can check the answers. I'll have the answers coming up on the next few slides. So number 1, you should have x equals 2, and on your paper I want you guys to go ahead and show the check as well, so you're familiar with showing those checks. So for the first one, just so you see the check, you would plug in your 2 with x, so 6 times 2 minus 2 plus 2 ends up being 12, and then the minus 2 plus 2 is an opposite pair, so they're just nothing, so really you get your check pretty fast on this one. Number 2, you should get x equals 6, and I have the check shown as well for this one. Number 3, x equals negative 2. I don't have the check shown here, but it's a really easy check when you plug it in. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0, and then 0 times negative 9 is 0, so you're just left with 6 equals 6. For number 4, the answer should have been 0, and if you had trouble with this, I made a do and undo chart. That's really helpful for a problem like this. So if you focus on your variable, the first thing done was plus 3, and then divided by 3, and then minus 5. So if we're going to do all of that backwards, you should have added 5 first, and then multiplied by 3, and then subtracted 3. So if you're ever getting stuck on any of these, you can definitely use the do and undo chart to help you out. For number 5, the answer should have been x equals 4. Number 6, x should be negative 42, and when you combine your like terms, 2/3 minus 1/3 makes life easy. It's just 1/3 x, and then you're going to subtract your 14 and then multiply by your reciprocal to get 1/3 to go away. Number 7, x should be negative 2. Something to keep in mind for this is you are distributing the negative sign in front of the parentheses, so both signs change. And then also that initial x that's out there, you can use identity property and call that 1x if that makes it easier for you. And number 8, x should be 6. So you were combining your like terms to get 4x minus 17, and then add your 17 and divide by 4. So that's it for multi-step equations. Just make sure you have your note sheet when we come to class, and I will see y'all soon.